Such a beautiful day here in Nairobi, 6:30, and that's how Kenyatta Avenue is looking like. Live images of Nairobi in and out of traffic, clearly flowing. It's going to be a good day today. So if you're just joining us, you're right in time for Press Review, where we take a look at some of the biggest stories making headlines in the local dailies. Give you a reason to grab a copy or two of the papers. Of course, we also have had an overview of the international scene earlier on in the show. But before I can dive straight into this, my panel this morning, Advocate of the High Court, Ambrose Weda, is seated closer to me. On my far left, I have Liz Kisianga. She is Executive Director at My Leader Kenya. It's good to have both of you here with us this morning. So let's begin with the Standard newspaper. As it says, I loved Joey, but he should carry his own cross. This is the latest that we have on the issue of Monica's murder. Nevertheless, above that, NCPB lost $2 billion in fertilizer subsidy, a story on page 12. But allow me to begin with the story on page 10, which is Milu's fate, which now lies with Justice David Maraga. That's all the way in page 10 of the Standard newspaper this morning. And with this specific scenario, Chief Justice is going to appoint a 3-bench judge to hear Milu's case. I mean, whether this has now become... We're seeing progress with this specific one. But if there's something that caught my eye while I was reading this specific article, it's when, in the case of DCJ herself, when she filed the case with the Constitutional Division of the High Court, but the DPP, Nordin Haji, asked the judge to transfer that case to the Anti-Corruption Division. The question here is, what determines where a case goes to? Which court, should I say?
Thank you so much. When you think or imagine or dream that your constitutional rights, in whatever shade, is being abused or is likely to be abused or infringed on any time, anywhere, then the Constitution entitles you to file a constitutional reference, which you can file in any form. You can even write a letter. Dear Judge, these people are trying to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to me, and that is very wrong. And the Constitution requires the judge to look at it, frame it into a constitutional question, and hear it. So that anytime there is a threatened breach of a constitutional right, you go to a constitutional court, which has been set aside. There's a constitutional and judicial review division of the High Court.
Right.
All breaches of rights are heard by the High Court.
Right.
That is what determines how you take it there. What DP Haji was saying, take this to the, he was talking out of ignorance.
Where do you see this going? Will it genuinely go to the Anti-Corruption Court or with the Constitution Division? I
said last time, and I say it now. Last time I was asked, I told you, the questions being raised are constitutional. And I see the judge saying, appoint a bench of 3 or 5 to hear it. I can tell you, I see the bench, unless the Chief Justice selects judges who he knows hates the DCJ. Because out of 100 or something, there are judges with the meat against the DCJ. So you can select them. Now the key is in this, you can select this one, that one, that one. All judges whose philosophy are well known to be anti certain things, then you select that one. But if he elects randomly, and elects constitutional gurus like Judge Odonga and so on, I'm telling you, they are going to quash the charges and order that due process be followed. The DCJ faces the Judicial Service Commission. And then if he is removed, then he can be charged before that. And I think, if you ask me, if DCJ sinks, that is how we will sink Chief Justices. If government doesn't want you, there'll always be some traffic offense against you and so on.
She's the first DCJ with this new constitution finding herself in such a scenario. Yes. Liz, let me rope you into the conversation. We will say that when she was filing her papers in court, that this is a sinister motive by the government. Because of to trace it to last year's nullification of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Do you also read that as a witch hunt towards the DCJ office?
Okay, for me, to be true, I find it quite sinister. I don't find it to be quite clean. And I think this is based, just as you have said, on the last elections. I think there's kind of witch hunt
All right, Liz, let me pause you there. We'll come back to you so you can get all your thoughts in one go. But before that, let me get Weda's thoughts as well.
There is, from what the DPP has raised, there are questions that hinge on criminal offenses. Okay? There are questions that hinge on criminal offenses that requires investigations.
Right.
The problem is the procedure. Okay? The procedure adopted shows that somebody was in a hurry to get at the DCJ.
So
and that is the sinister part.
Right.
The hurry, the rush, the humiliation. They should have just gone and said, DCJ, we found there's some loan you borrowed, we found there's some taxes you didn't pay, we find this and this and this. These are grounds that we want you removed. And once we remove you, we will charge you. Then if the Judicial Service Commission finds she'll be removed, then they charge her. But I think somebody was in such a hurry that she should go today. That is sinister, that is wrong.
And so you're reading into the same sentence that we saw.
It is not about saying,
I don't think we will revisit.
No, I don't think it's about revisiting.
But it's still,
I think it's about the future.
Right.
The future elections and the future CJ. If you look at the mathematics, Justice Maranga will retire. Justice CJ Mwelo, the Deputy Chief Justice Mwelo will be acting. When she's acting as DCJ, she can manipulate the Judicial Service Commission and find herself being made the DCJ. You understand? So I think somebody is looking to the future. Is not revisiting. President Uhuru has no problem. He is already the president, and there's nothing to revisit but future.
Let's talk about her image and her brand.
Yes.
While we wait for this case to continue,
yes,
how will she preside over other cases when she also has a court case herself?
I think as at now...
With a tinted image.
It's not a tinted image. I think they just put her in an awkward position unnecessarily. And good manners would have required for now, she's tears off because it's embarrassment.
Right.
And then there's also bitterness, there's anger. That's the part that I think makes it difficult for her to continue. But otherwise, constitutionally, legally, all round, she's entitled to sit. But discipline-wise, manners-wise, and credibility-wise, she would be behind the scenes.
Now, how will she be able to do her job then in such a...
There are many things. The work of a deputy CJ are many, apart from sitting. And Supreme Court has very little work. There are many other works that she can do in consultation with the Chief Justice, so that whereas she continues, she doesn't put people in an awkward position where she sits, and some of the cases may involve issues that are similar to her. So you want to make president quickly, which you will rely on when your case comes.
All right, allow me to introduce Senator from Makueni County, plus is also a lawyer, Honorable Mtula Kilonzo. It's good to have you with us here this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Liz, I had cut you short, but yes, I wanted to get your thoughts on what I had asked you earlier in the case of, for you, you saw this as you agree with me, this is a witch hunt for her.
For me, it's a witch hunt because the grounds, the whole issue is based in terms of the allegations. I'm yet to understand them. And I see it being more politically instigated. Yes.
Rather than getting to the real...
Rather than getting to the real or bottom of the matter. Yes.
All right, Senator Mtula, as also a lawyer, I would love to hear your thoughts with perhaps how far, especially for a sitting judge at the Supreme Court level, how far does the immunity for prosecution go?
Thanks. I will not get into too much detail because I also sit in the legal team. Only to say that once Ambrose Weda speaks, chances are that he has exhausted the topic. But there's a point being made that if you look at the allegations generally, in relation to her work, it begs the question why they thought that they would prosecute her. And the way, and by the way, maybe you have not mentioned, and I should mention, that in the course of investigating this matter, the judge has been prosecuted in the press. Every statement, every piece of evidence appears to have been put in the newspaper. In fact, I was very happy yesterday when one of the judges in the pending criminal cases said that he's an old court judge and gets very upset when he gets to read the evidence of what will appear before him in the press. I'm not certain what is happening, but it's absolutely out of order to have cases prosecuted through newspapers, means evidence, statements. I am, for the first time, reading statements of witnesses in the newspapers when ideally they should not in the newspapers. In essence, then that means that somebody is attempting to prosecute and try suspects, whatever the case, in the public domain, as opposed to presenting the evidence, which not only compromises the prosecution case, but at the same time paints a very bad picture of what they want the accused to look like.
What if one argues that such cases are of public interest? And here's the thing, given that we are in Kenya and corruption is one of the biggest ailments that we have as a country, if public interest is not put forward in certain cases, you will find that tomorrow it's disappeared and gone. No one has been prosecuted.
Let me tell you what you don't know. You might get very entertained about reading a lot of these cases and the bravado of some of these murders, but all the suspects are innocent. And that is the principle of law that we must respect in the Constitution, that they are innocent. But the pictures that are being painted are wrong for purposes of their innocence. So even if you were to disclose, there are certain limits that should be there. What I don't know is whether it's a deliberate attempt to disclose the evidence in advance in order to manipulate the impressions created on particularly the judge. In the case of Justice Mwilu, every little transaction was in the press. But the question, and my senior Ambrose Weda has raised it, is whether, since this was a commercial transaction, where she was either buying land or borrowing, and it's got nothing to do with the fact that she sat in a certain case, it would have been much worse if she was dealing with a litigant. If Imperial Bank was a litigant or something that she was prosecuting, that would have been something that all of us would have been found difficulty in defending. But if somebody went to borrow and they borrowed money and they are in default, like everybody would be in default, that is a commercial transaction. It's got nothing to do with the conduct of that person sitting as a judge. But in the cases that have been prosecuted before, and again my colleague Ambrose Weda can confirm, in the radical surgery and much later, in the Tunoi case, the one of the former governor of Nairobi, it was about litigation of a matter that is actively in your court.
Right.
And therefore, in such a case, then you have the misconduct of a judge and any other issues coming into play. But if you wanted to buy a piece of land, judges are now going to be very careful about borrowing. You can't borrow to buy a car, you can't borrow to buy a piece of land.
For investment and so forth.
Or you can't even invest, go to the stock exchange, you know, something like that.
Out of fear,
yes,
all right.
because you sit in public office, and therefore, if you are found to have given Ambrose Weda, got a check from Judge X, then it becomes misconduct. Then that is not correct. Yes.
All right, let me bring your attention to another story, and this is the issue of NCPB losing about 2 billion in fertilizer subsidy, one of the biggest stories that we've also highlighted. Now, the latest report that was tabled by the National Assembly, out of 3.7 billion Kenyan shillings, the National Cereals and Produce Board cannot account for 2 billion of it. Liz, let me just get your thoughts. I feel like every single month, NCPB is always on our newspapers, always in the news for the wrong reason. How do we begin to tackle, or should I say find a cure for this specific scenario? At the heart of it are Kenyan taxpayers who are feeling the pinch of it. It's the farmers. Yes. How do we begin to solve this issue?
Kibiku, this is an issue of the corruption culture in our country. Every time you find public funds are being embezzled and we don't know exactly where it's going. And then after some time, you find it everywhere like, oh, this one has gotten lost, this one has gotten lost. Here, the issue is corruption. And the essence or what we need to do is to get to the root of corruption. Then once we uproot that, then the others could be solved. Because as much as we say we are trying to tackle corruption or loss of public funds, right, at the end of the day, you find that another scandal just comes up. Another scandal just comes up, not just for NCPB. Just remember the last year we were tackling matters to do with NYS. And what happened? Immediately, another bigger scandal was up again, flaring. So I think the issue here is how the whole nation, starting from the senior people to the grassroots,
are going to work on fighting corruption.
Okay.
That's the main issue.
All right, let's move away from the Standard newspaper. Let me bring your attention as well to the Daily Nation. Public debt to hit about 7 trillion by 2022 reporting. Of course, this comes just in the same week, which you will find the story behind the Daily Nation this morning, where Safaricom uses to pay more for calls and SMS. I'm sure you've seen that story where Safaricom has said to increase its prices on voice call, data, as well as SMSs, passing to consumers that 15% excessive duty imposed. But having that in mind, let's turn over to page 6. Page 6 is where this specific story is highlighted. Public debt burden to hit about 5.6 trillion. That's by next year June, a time like this around next year June. But by 2022, it will be standing at 7 trillion Kenyan shillings. But let me also highlight it further by telling you some of the countries that we owe this money to, all right? So China, we stand with about 559.1 billion Kenyan shillings. Italy, 101.9, Germany, 34.7 billion, and Belgium, 10.2 billion. US stands at a cool 2.9 billion. So that just gives you an overall of some of the countries. We haven't even gone into the organizations such as IDA or IMF. Whether, given this specific scenario, are Kenyans truly supposed to believe that the Jubilee government is making life more easier, more sustainable here in Kenya?
Kenyans should always know that as long as they vote on the basis of tribe, then they should expect anything. If I stand for elections and all you look for is whether I'm your tribe's person, and you leave competent people like Senator Mtola Kilonzo here. He wants to be president, but I can't vote for him because he's a Mkamba and a Luo. What do I expect? You should expect anything. I think I did economics also at the university. But when your debt, your collection is 1.4, 1.5 trillion, your debt is 7 point something trillion. In other words, what you owe people, if you don't do anything with your income for a whole year, then you have to pay them for 5 years. You are basically bankrupt. And I think we are seeing a trend of voodoo economics.
Voodoo economics.
Yes, being employed by people who are, some came from World Bank, others came from IMF, others came from wherever. Big titles, big names. But basics that an old Makerere graduate, President Kibaki, employed last time. Basic economics from Makerere. Yeah. We expected President Uhuru to bring now the economics from the London School of Economics. And we would be at the British. I think something is deeply wrong. Something is deeply wrong on the fundamentals of basic economics. And you know now, apart from that, we have, that's the external debt. The pending bills also runs into billions of shillings.
All right, let me get the thoughts of Senator before we can go on commercial break. Senator, your thoughts on this specific scenario, given that I think even for a lot of Kenyans, it's not the issue that probably our debt will get to 7 trillion by 2022. It's the fact that we do not see where this money is going to. The government will say infrastructures, roads and etc. But truly at the heart of it, there's no development that is taking place. It's just scandal after scandal.
Well, there's a famous saying that when you're in a hole, you stop digging. I'm not quite sure whether that applies to Kenya because the hole is getting deeper. And it's going to get worse. When you think 8% of fuel levy is a problem, and 1.5% from employer and 1.5% from employee for national housing, it's going to get worse. Because we have not even started paying. Some of it will start kicking in 2020. As we speak this morning, counties have not received their funds for development since July. They're stuck. That was the same problem that they had last year. If you read a recent article, we were unable to actually do a lot of things in the last quarter because of the debt that we were trying to service. What did we borrow for? One is the standard gauge railway. We kept saying that this is a phantom. The standard gauge railway is not a white elephant. It's not white, and there's no elephant. It's just a phantom. And as we speak, the Chinese are collecting the money from the standard gauge railway on site, cash on delivery, and many others. We are about to borrow for what you call the expressway.
Right.
It's about 426 billion. When I said that, and if you look at the debt portfolio, the Chinese debt is the highest. forming over 50% of our total debt. The question to ask, and the people who have not told you, is that we have, and Ambrose Weda is right, that we are technically insolvent as a country. And in some cases, rumors, and we as members of parliament have not helped the situation, because there's rumor that we have used the port for part of the borrowing, and I can tell you,
all right, we'll be back
the
with
problems you hear in Zambia,
right,
the
will
problems
happen here
in Sierra Leone, the problems you have seen in Malaysia, why Dr. Mahathir is a hero in Malaysia today at 92 years, the oldest CEO in the world, is because he has told the Chinese to pack and